Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to The Sanctuary. I'm your host, Professor C, and we're going to do some more A&P today. We're going to wrap up our muscles talks today by looking at the final group, those of the foot. So, let's check them out. Yes, folks, it is true. We have finally made it to the bottom of the skeleton, all the way down to the feet. And very much like we did the intrinsic hand muscles, I'm going to deal with these foot muscles more or less like a show and tell. Instead of worrying about every little origin and every little insertion, I'm going to show you the big picture here and some strategies for memorizing these muscles. So here's the big picture. Don't get overwhelmed by it at first. It's actually very helpful to see something like this. How this is usually taught is by first flipping the foot over so we can see the sole of the foot. So notice I'll draw a red line right here. Everything on the top of that red line, we're looking at the underside or the sole of the foot. And what we usually call that is the plantar surface of the foot. And this is usually called P1. That's going to be the first layer of the plantar muscles. And then you can work your way deeper and deeper, moving through the foot to P2 layer, P3 layer, and then finally to P4 layer, where we don't see too many muscles, but just a few. And then by the time we get to that P4, that plantar 4 depth, we're actually at the top of the foot. And so we'll have to flip the foot over like this to see the others. And that's in fact where we're going to start this lecture, is the same point where we end. I'm going to start on the top of the foot, the dorsal surface, and then we'll go under and see the little guys. So here we begin with the dorsal muscles, and they're quite simple. Remember, I don't want to show you all the little details here, and if it's grayed out in this image, it's because we tackled it already when we talked about some of the muscles that come from the leg. So the red one is Extensor digitorum brevis. It must be a muscle, a short one that extends the digits, and then we have its partner out there, Extensor hallucis brevis, that runs to the great toe. Now, I said we're going to end where we begin, so remember this Extensor digitorum brevis because it will be the first and the last muscle we see today. Okay, we got to flip the foot over. Remember on plantar layer 1, that down in green here, I'm just going to put apo. This is an aponeurosis. It's a sheet of connective tissue that's been cut off so we can see all the musculature right here in layer 1. So in yellow, we see abductor hallucis, so it must pull the big toe away from the midline, being called an abductor. So this is AB. I'll put AB, H, abductor hallucis. Next to it we have FDB, flexor digitorum brevis. Just like it sounds, it's going to help us flex our toes, but it's very short. Next to it in blue there, we see abductor AB, abductor digiti minimi. And again, digiti minimi always refers to the small toe or the pinky toe, and you see it in there on the side of the foot would help you abduct your small toe. If I could remove these muscles and look right under them, I would see the next layer. We'll call this layer 2. Now, something like the yellow thing you see there, those are just tendons. I'm going to put an X here. We've seen this already. Those are just tendons of flexor digitorum longus, and we don't need to see that anymore because we did that in the leg muscles. If you want to see that, flip back and watch one talk before this one about muscles of the leg. Here we're more interested in the red and the blue. If you say, man, those red ones look familiar, they do, but the blue one probably does not ring a bell. The reason why QP, I'll put here as the label, may not look familiar is because there is no homologous muscle in the hand to quadratus plantae, so we'll pronounce it quadratus plantae. The red ones there do look familiar, and we have seen them before. They're called lumbricals in the hand, and they're called lumbricals here in the foot. Now, if you're asking what these do specifically, they have something to do with moving either metatarso-phalangeal joints or interphalangeal joints in between the individual digits. In layer 3, another set of muscles here. The blue one is going to be flexor digiti minimi brevis, and as it suggests, it will flex the small toe, but it's a small muscle. Now, the red one here is split into two different heads, so we have adductor ADD, right? It's the one that's going to bring back the toe to the midline, the great toe, hallux. So there's an oblique, and that would be this one here. So I'll put AH for adductor hallucis, And then I'll put the OB here to show that's the oblique head. Remember, oblique just means diagonal, so that one's easy to remember. And then on the other side here, I'll label AH, adductor hallucis part 2, and I'll put a TR here to remind us that's the transversus part. Then all we have left is the yellow one, flexor hallucis brevis, a short muscle that helps us flex the great toe. All right, on to layer 4. At this point, it gets fairly simple. There are only 3 muscles technically in this 4th plantar layer, and they're called the plantar interossei. We saw something similar in the hand. Again, interossei referring to muscles that are in between the bones there. And you see them labeled fairly clearly on this image here. Now, if we keep going, though, remember, we're almost at the top of the foot. We're still, from this shot, I can see big giant calcaneus bone, the heel bone, is staring at me still the whole time. But what I have to do to see the next set of muscles is actually flip it over so we can see the back of the foot, the dorsal aspect. So let's do that. So I flipped it to the back, and I can confirm that because now I see on top here, there's talus bone. On calcaneus is now below it. So I can tell we're looking at the top of the foot, the dorsal aspect, and now I can see the 4 dorsal interossei, sometimes referred to as the dorsal intrinsics. And those kind of have that lassoing effect that we saw in the interossei of the hand. So if we put it all together and we look at these layers just like we learned, layer 1 would be abductor hallucis, flexor digitorum brevis, and abductor digiti minimi. Now moving to the second image, number 4 would make layer 2, quadratus plantae, and its pal, the lumbricals, 1 through 4. If we want to go to layer 3, we see a little tiny muscle there on the little tiny toe, flexor digiti minimi brevis. 7, notice, is split into 2 heads. So we have the adductor hallucis, we have the oblique head, 7A, and we have the transverse head there at 7B. 8 would be the little muscle that helps flex the big toe, so flexor hallucis brevis. Now I said once we get to layer 4, there's not much here. There's just 3 plantar interossei, and that's what they are. And again, at this point, we're still looking at the bottom of the foot, but we've made it through all 4 of these layers, so we've actually pushed all the way to the top. So it's better if we can now, pointing my arrow, flip the foot where we see the calcaneus on the bottom and the talus on the top now. And we can see those 4, labeled number 10 here, those 4 dorsal interossei. And if you say, well, what then could number 11 be? Well, I said we would end exactly where we began, and it's going to be extensor digitorum brevis. All right, hope you enjoyed that little quick one on the foot muscles. Thanks for watching it if you did. Check out some more videos if you want to learn some more about A and P. See you for the next one. Bye-bye.